Howdy lads, welcome back to a new video. In this video we will be reacting to my Premier League predictions. It were midway predictions, meaning I did these predictions back in January when I started making videos on this channel, let's be perfectly honest. Hence why I've not done predictions at the start of the season, and why these predictions should be more accurate than ones you normally do at the start of the season. So without reacting to the video, I suggest we just compare tables. I've got the table that I predicted right in front of me and the actual table, so I suggest we start off with 20th and work our way up. In 20th, it is Southampton. I said it would be Southampton. I think everybody knew it would be Southampton. I said they would score 10 points and be the worst Premier League side of all time. In the end, they scored 12, so they actually aren't the worst Premier League side of all time. That still is Derby County to this day. But I'm giving myself 2 points for a spot on prediction, and 1 point if I'm off by just one place. Meaning 40 out of 40 is the maximum I can achieve, and I have already achieved 2 out of 2, so that's a pretty great start. But if we're also being honest, Southampton isn't the hardest of starts. In at 19th, I said it would be Leicester City. They actually jumped above Ipswich and went up in 18th. I said they would get 20 points, they got 25. Well, I've said this about Leicester City the entire season. I think they are the worst in the worst position out of the three clubs going down, because they have an aging squad. They have players who aren't Premier League quality but are on Premier League salaries, and they will have to offload a lot of those big earners if they want to compete in the championship next season, because I don't think a Harry Winks and Oliver Skip gets you competitive, to be completely honest. I do, however, feel that not enough has been made of the fact that they have actually jumped above Ipswich in the table, meaning I only get 1 point for this prediction, but also meaning Ipswich are now second to last and have finished second to last, whereas they were the team that got the most credit out of the promoted sides over the course of the season, just like Luton did last season. And it is pretty strange to see Leicester City standing above them in the final league table. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because all three of them have gone straight back down. That's all anybody will really remember. In 18th position, I said it would be Wolves. Yeah, that's not my finest prediction, let's be completely honest. But Gary O'Neill's Wolves side genuinely really were in a relegation scrap. Okay, maybe they weren't as bad as the three teams that went straight back down, but still, there were a lot of question marks about this team. A lot of my question marks were about the names of these players, not necessarily that their names specifically, but who are these guys? In what kind of system do they fit? Will Gary O'Neill be the perfect manager to get the best out of him, of or the best out of them? It turns out he wasn't. In came Vitor Pereira, and Vitor Pereira has absolutely rejuvenated that side. He came in with new ideas, new tactics, and sometimes that's all it takes to get the players on board. Wolves players got on board, they got to playing some pretty good football in the end, and they finished 16th in the league, meaning I'm off by 2 places and won't get a point for this prediction. In 17th, so one spot above the relegation zone, I put Everton, um, meaning there is still one of the relegated sides who hasn't featured in my predicted um, table, which is what it is. As for Everton, they did not finish 17th. In real life, they actually went on to finish 13th, which, I mean, every Everton supporter would have taken at the start of the season. But let's be completely honest, all the credit has to go to David Moyes. Sean Dyche had run out of ideas, run out of motivation, run out of ways to motivate his own players, and David Moyes has just come in with a bang. It seems like the combination Everton David Moyes just has some kind of chemi- chemistry reaction, let's call it, where it just clicks automatically. David Moyes, it suits him being back at Everton. I like it that he's back at Everton. Next season they will be moving to a new stadium, which is why it's absolutely huge that he's kept them up and kept them up so comfortably. So now Everton can look to start recruiting this summer in a more ambitious way than they did over the last few seasons, which is an exciting time to be an Everton fan. And in the real table, 17th was actually Tottenham Hotspur on 38 points, which I'm going to sit back for this one. Let's just have a very quick conversation about how absolutely nuts that is. Spurs have finished 17th. 17th! That is nuts. Never in a million years should a Spurs side be allowed to finish 17th on 38 points, but especially not. I I hear the same excuse Manchester United tried to use. We are focusing on the Europa League. We are putting all our eggs in that basket. And midweek football is hard. So it is a tactic, shall we say, to lay your focus on the Europa League instead of the Premier League. But no matter where your focus is, finishing 17th with a fewer points total than the magic 40 points is an absolute disgrace. Let's have it absolutely right here. It's an absolute disgrace.
It's embarrassing. It's a disgrace. That's what it is, a disgrace.
And I don't care Ange won the trophy. For me, he has to go. I completely understand Daniel Levy if he was to sack Ange tomorrow. I don't care about the Europa League, mate. I genuinely believe, and this is not because I'm a Newcastle fan, the EFL Cup is a more impressive achievement to win than the Europa League. Because if you are good enough, you're playing Champions League football. The top five in England, the top five in Spain, the top four in Italy, the top four in Germany, the top three or four in France, they're all Champions League, not Europa League. Hence why Tottenham and Manchester United had the opportunity to win the Europa League. Because if all those Champions League sides were in the Europa League, or if Spurs, like they are next season, are in the Champions League, they ain't winning shit. And then you are left with a season in which you finished 17th under 40 points. It's mad. That's an absolute disgrace. If Spurs accept this, this will become the norm, and you will cease to be a big club. I can promise you now.
Tottenham is the history of the Tottenham.
I must admit, I did quite enjoy my rant from here, so I think I'm just gonna lean back for the rest of this video. Moving on onwards to our 16th position, and I've put Ipswich there.
If I'm not 16th!
Ipswich in 16th. Well, listen, I didn't want to be the one to be believing from the get go that all three promoted sides would go straight back down. Everyone had a feeling, everyone had a fear. The fear unfortunately came through. Next season, I don't think it will be as straightforward. Sunderland will be bottom of the league. Don't you worry about that. But other than that, I think Burnley, if they can keep together most of their defense, they might have a solid shout. And don't forget, Leeds United is now backed by Red Bull money, which always helps. Anyway, Ipswich 16th.
16th!
16th. Wolves finished there in real life. I did switch them up because I said Wolves would finish 18th and get relegated, which obviously they didn't. But still, no points for me on that prediction. Meaning that's now 3 in a row in which I have got 0 points. Let's move on to number 15. Okay, I will move forward a little bit again because I'm starting to get a little too comfortable. But in 15th position, I've put, let's have a look, Brentford. I am off by 5 positions. Brentford finished in 10th. This is a midway season prediction, hence why I don't really understand why I've got Brentford this low, because I don't think they were ever going to lose Mbeumo in January. There was some talk about Wissa going to Nottingham Forest, but none of that ever got to be advanced. So I don't understand what went wrong here. Thomas Frank has done an absolutely amazing job yet again with this Brentford team, finishing 10th inside the top half without actually breaking the bank every single summer like most promoted teams do when they get back to the promised land. Yeah, everything about Brentford is just so unbelievably impressive, and I was underestimating them yet again. And I'll probably do it again next season, let's be honest. The real team that actually finished 15th in real life was Manchester United, and I suggest we get back to them. 14th, Spurs. I've said all I needed to say on Spurs. They finished 17th, not 14th, which the fact that I said Spurs would finish 14th in the league, and that was optimistic, that was too high for them to achieve. Genuinely embarrassing. I don't care how many injuries you had this season. 38 points is never acceptable. Never. In at number 13, I went with West Ham, and the fact that they actually finished 14th means I get one more point. Yay! As for West Ham, a lot of people had very high expectations of them, given the fact they won the transfer window. But at the start of the season, I made videos on a different channel. I made a Premier League prediction from the start of the season in Dutch. If you want me to compare the real table to the table I made back there as well, let me know in the comment section down below and I'll make it happen. Everybody back then was predicting them to finish in the top half of the table, whereas I said that they did bring in some interesting players, but sometimes stability is a bigger plus, shall we say, for the season that's coming up. And a great transfer window kind of sets you up for some seasons down the line, not necessarily the one that's about to follow. Hence why Newcastle have done so well without actually really bringing in anyone. But it was Lopetegui for me. Lopetegui just didn't make sense because David Moyes had to go out of West Ham because he was too negative of a manager, and you brought in the Spanish David Moyes. How is that ever going to work? In at number 12, I filled it in with Brighton and Hove Albion. They actually went on to finish 8th, which is pretty impressive. Small applause for Brighton, not too big, not too small. But I think Fabian Hörsler is actually the more interesting thing to talk about here. Because has now finished as the team who is closest to the European places. He actually would have got Brighton back into the Conference League if it weren't for Crystal Palace winning the Emirates FA Cup, for which massive congratulations, by the way, Crystal Palace fans. But for such an unbelievably young, inexperienced, and radically different coach from all the other trainers in the league, he has had a pretty great debut season, and I'm actually quite excited to see what he'll be able to do next season, even though I don't particularly like Brighton that much. In 11th, I put Crystal Palace, and of course, they finish fucking 12th. What can I say about Crystal Palace that hasn't already been said? Unbelievably impressive cup win from them, winning the Emirates FA Cup, winning the first ever piece of silverware in the club's history. Absolutely massive for them, absolutely buzzing for their supporters. They're going on a European journey next season in the Europa League, along with Aston Villa, which are two teams I would back to be able to at least get into a final, especially if Tottenham Hotspur and Manchester United are able to reach a Europa League final. That already means I value that competition a lot less than I did last season. But apart from that, that's again a massive opportunity for silverware. Again, a massive opportunity to get into the Champions League, somewhere Villa want to return to, and Crystal Palace will obviously be dreaming about reaching. Apart from that, I'm only off by one place. They managed to break the curse where they only finished within the 40 to 50 points region. They've now exceeded the 50-point marker, which is just a pretty great place for them to be able to kick on from next season. And I'm very interested to see what kind of business they do, especially now they've got European football in the bag. 10th, I said it would be Manchester United.
Well, if you don't know football, you shouldn't be with the microphone in your hand.
I am off by 5, maybe even 6 places if you consider the fact that Wolves finished on the same points tally as Manchester United. And Manchester United, I'm sorry, if I go in on Tottenham Hotspur, which I have, I have to go in on you as well. What an absolute embarrassment of a season. In the second half of the season, Manchester United have only won against the relegated sides. They have spent less time in front this Premier League season than Ipswich Town. You can keep reeling off stat after stat after stat after stat that is just so extraordinarily embarrassing for Manchester United. But I do want to thank you for beating Aston Villa on the final day, obviously. Listen, without getting into too much detail about that whole scenario, last season we didn't get any European football because Manchester United won the FA Cup. Now Manchester United beat Aston Villa to get us into the Champions League. Aston Villa gets a dodgy VAR decision against them, and yes, I am not blind. I know that was an absolute mistake by the VAR, not necessarily the referee, but very much so the VAR. But you also stayed up 3 years ago in the league due to a clear and obvious mistake. That wasn't necessarily a VAR mistake, but that was the first time in I think over 3,000 games where goal line technology failed. And that kept you in the league. And look at where you have been since. You've gone to Champions League, Conference League. Next season you're playing Europa League. You've seen an FA Cup semi-final like you did this season. You've seen a quarter-final appearance against Paris Saint-Germain in the freaking Champions League. None of that would have been true without that faulty goal line technology. So I don't think Aston Villa fans have too much to complain about when it comes to this decision either. As for Manchester United, 15th in the league, absolute disgrace.
Disgrace. That's what it is. A disgrace.
In ninth, I put Fulham. They actually went on to finish 11th, which is 2 positions off yet again, meaning I don't get a point for that prediction either. But I don't hate that prediction. Fulham is just absolutely. How do I say this without pissing off Fulham fans? You are the most mid-table out of all the mid-table teams in the Premier League. Meaning, I don't think for 1 second you'll be in a relegation scrap next season, but I also don't really believe you will be in a race for Europe next season. Just plain mid-table yet again. And for a Fulham side who were yo-yoing from the Championship to the Premier League for a couple of seasons, I think that's 5 seasons in a row where they got either promoted or relegated. I think they would take this kind of stability in order for them to build upon that for next season and the season afterwards and the season afterwards. So Fulham for now, mid-table, the most mid-table club out of the mid-table clubs, but that's a compliment in one way or another. Number 8, I said Aston Villa would finish there. They finished 6th, so again, off by 2 places. Again, no points for me. Very unfortunate. Doesn't really matter. I think Aston Villa really impressed me over the second half of the season, where they managed to go on a bit of a run in the Champions League. That was pretty impressive. But the fact that they didn't massively fall off in the league, I thought By the point I was making this prediction, they had gone on a bit of a bad run of form, but especially towards the end of the season, they absolutely rectified that, went on a monstrous run to get that Champions League qualification for next season. In the end, they just about fell short. Let's be completely honest here. It also wasn't only the Dutch EVAR decisions. You got played of the park against Manchester United, which is the first time this season they actually played someone of the park. Yeah, Aston Villa. Listen, it was close. Better luck next season. Number 7, I said that would be Bournemouth. They finish ninth again. Two fucking places off. Okay, so now we are noticing a trend which I'm not liking. But I said Bournemouth would finish 7th and qualify for Europe. I think we're all a bit disappointed by Bournemouth's second half of the season. Andoni Iraola's men looked like they could take on and beat pretty much anyone when the turn of the year was there. But after that, it kind of dwindled. The injuries started catching up with them, and they fizzled out towards the end of the season, which is ultimately why they finished ninth, in my opinion, instead of maybe a Conference League position ahead of Nottingham Forest, because Nottingham Forest have had an unbelievably impressive season, but I don't necessarily think they are a much better team than Bournemouth are. In 6th, I had Chelsea. They finished 4th. Again, obviously, I am off by 2 freaking places. Well, this is starting to get really frustrating. I said Chelsea would finish in a Europa League position. They actually finished in a Champions League position, and I think Chelsea has to get a lot of credit for this season. Obviously, if you spent 1.5 billion pounds over the course of 3 years, well, at one point you most likely will return to the Champions League. But let's not sound like a salty Premier League fan for once. Let's not show my true Chelsea hatred in every single video. It has been a pretty impressive season for Chelsea. I think there is a lot for them to build upon towards the future. If you know the double pivot between Lavia and Caicedo, that works really well for them. I think Palmer has had another great season despite his, shall we say, quiet spell. And actually, I believe that might do him some good in the long run, because if he just keeps on performing at this unprecedented rate and suddenly has an entire season where he drops off, that could be really damaging for his stock. Whereas now we've seen he is human, he can have dry spells, he can have moments where he doubts his own confidence. I only think that adds to the human side of the player and to the understanding when things just aren't working out. But again, I was off by 2 positions. 5th, I said 5th would be Nottingham Forest. Where did they finish? Obviously, 2 positions away from that in 7th. I am going to jump off a bridge. That's 5 in a row where I've been off by exactly 2 positions, meaning I don't get a single point for those predictions. But it is what it is. Nottingham Forest, I said you would finish 5th. A lot of people already disliked that prediction because at the time they were 3rd and, according to some people, nailed on for Champions League football. Let's be honest, it's not necessarily that they choked Champions League qualification, it's more so the fact that they don't have the experience. A lot of teams are very strong as well. It has been a long time since it has been this competitive, both for the Champions League positions and Europa League and Conference League. But the teams that got Europa League and Conference League were all aiming for Champions League football on the final day. Hence why I'm not too angry at my predictions, but I'm very disappointed because all of them are 2 away. In 4th, I went with Newcastle, and what a season it has been. We finished 5th, but this meant or means we will be playing Champions League football yet again next season, second time in 3 years, and we've won a cup, a Carabao Cup, and I've already explained to you before why I believe there's more value in winning this trophy than, for example, a Europa League, because you have to be a certain level of shit in order to be eligible to compete for the Europa League. And especially now, no teams trickle down from the Champions League. Yeah, the Tottenham Manchester United final was just a farce. But moving on from that, given the fact I said Newcastle would finish fourth and they actually finished fifth, let's not go into any more details on how we ourselves did in the last game week. But that is one point for me because I'm only off by one position instead of two, and I will already reveal to you the top three, which was probably the easiest part of the predictions when you did them at the halfway point. I had spot on. I had City in third on 71 points. They finished on 70 or 73 points. They finished on 71 in real life. I had Arsenal in second on 78 points, and they finished second on 74 points in real life. And obviously, I championed Liverpool on 93 points, and they actually only got 84, which is a low tally to win the league with. But when you're already pretty much nailed on to win the league by December, I get switching off sometimes and dropping unnecessary points. Anyway, those were my mid-season Premier League predictions. I finished on 14 points out of a possible 40. If you think you would have done any better, please make sure to let me know what your predictions would have been at the start of the season. Make sure to stay tuned for our predictions for next season, which will most likely be done around about August, maybe the start of September after the transfer window's closed. I'm not really sure yet. We'll just have to wait and see. But anyways, I really want to thank you for watching. Let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of this video. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Go follow all our socials, Magpie247 on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You know the drill. And I would like to see you in the next video. Bye.